Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Marketer Podcast. This is Richard and joined by my co-host, Kylie. Hi, Kylie.
Hello.
And one of the top questions we actually get from both existing clients or potential clients is how to be more productive, how to create more programs and output. And in a world where it seems like social wants you to post every 3 minutes or to create videos, or you always have to have the next program or the next thing. I think this is a really important topic. And I'll start it off by saying that I think that as a general rule, like more is not better. And so I think the first principle or premise is to make sure that you're doing the right things in the right order, because a lot of times greater output of maybe non-essential content, also called crap. But yeah, so it's kind of focusing on the most important task. And what I have seen is that a lot of times that people aren't focused on the most important task. And so maybe I'll start by listing some things that I think are really important to focus on, and then we can maybe dive into a little bit about how I work and how Kylie works in terms just to create better, higher quality content on an ongoing basis. So I think the three buckets for me are kind of like ongoing content to nurture your lists. And so this would be emails, regular emails, and social posts. We have a membership group that helps people do this called the Digital Soul Syndicate. That's where people can get help on that area. And really, you need to be allocating time every week to be doing this. And you can batch create some of it, but I think this type of content in particular needs to be personal and it needs to be time sensitive. A second bucket is content that is lead gen. And so this kind of content is stuff that is new or evergreen. When I say evergreen, it's maybe campaigns that run on an ongoing basis. And I think the lifeline of any business is getting new leads. And on the previous podcast, we talked about how bringing new leads in is not just something nice to do, but it's also a sacred obligation so that you can get your work in more hands. And so I think this second area is often neglected by a lot of people. And then when they go to launch and they don't have sales, or they're trying to sell to the same people, they're like, how do I build an audience? And so this is the thing that I think every week you should be asking, how can I increase the number of people in my field? And then the last bucket is just the content that you teach, the models, the systems, your programs. How are you either creating new programs or making the programs that you already have important? Anything outside this tends to be frivolous. And then, if you're sending, let's just say you're sending 5 emails a week, but you don't have any lead gen, well, send a few less emails and then work on the lead gen. Or maybe you have, probably more common is people want to create new types of programs and offerings, but they're not working on their lead gen or not nurturing their list. So I think these three buckets have to be balanced. And I think that's one of the keys into allocating your time through the week. And if you have a team with your staff, is how you can use these three buckets and then kind of always have something going on in all of them so that you're working on both the content, the lead gen, and the ongoing nurture sequences. So Kylie, do you have anything to add to kind of these three buckets, or do you have another bucket to add, or want to go in deeper
I
on any of these
do.
buckets?
I would add sales conversations to this bucket. When I think about the highest level of productivity, what I think of is what's the most income generating activity that you can be doing. And to me, having conversations with potential clients is the best leveraged activity because you want to be good at sales. You're not going to be a great copywriter or a great content creator if you don't actually know how to sell. And even if you're selling a program that's more at like the $97 to $297 program, we don't tend to think of having sales conversations for those types of programs. Usually it's going to start at like 5,000 or above when we're going to start getting on the phone with people. However, if you don't have any sales experience or done a lot of sales calls, then it's going to be challenging to write a sales page that's going to sell to people because you don't really know what their objections are. You don't know why they would join or not join. So I recommend having conversations with the people in your universe and just getting to know them better and getting to understand what makes them tick, what motivates them, what stops them from being motivated, what are their challenges, what is getting what they want even mean to them. That's an important piece of information that you can get from a conversation that you're not going to get from just chatting with them in Facebook inbox. And so I just really encourage you to have conversations with as many people as you can, because that's going to translate into everything that you write or shoot on video. I was writing some emails yesterday and I just didn't even have to think about it. I was writing the bullets down for what blocks conscious entrepreneurs from putting themselves out there and creating content. And it took me like 30 seconds to write those bullets because I know our audience so well. I was them at one point. I am still them from another perspective. I've walked in their shoes. I am walking in their shoes. I understand them so well that I don't have to really even think about it or do research or do homework before I start a campaign. But I put in 10 to 12 years of talking to people. Now you don't have to do that. You could just talk to 5 people and you can start to see a pattern in terms of what it is that is happening for them, what their pain is, what they're willing to invest to get out of that pain, what's on the other side of it for them. What does that look like? Why does it matter? Are they willing to take the leap, and why should they trust you? These are all the things that you can get out of talking to people that you're not going to get in any other way. And then you can do all the things that Richard was talking about. You can write the emails, you can create the content, you can do all those things when you know your audience really, really well.
Yeah, I love that. And I agree with you, Kylie. Sales conversations and sales coffee is definitely, I think it's an important bucket to allocate your time to. And some people have others do it, but I think initially, I think for a lot of conscious entrepreneurs, sometimes they struggle with the sales piece, but it's really just inviting people in and telling people how you can help them with the solution and getting toward whatever kind of transformation they want. Once you realize you're just trying to be of service to try to help people with whatever they're wanting to do, then it becomes a lot easier. Because I think sales has kind of a bad rap, but when you see there's like a sacred version of selling that helps people move toward their higher vision of themselves, and it's so important. Well, I'm kind of curious because I kind of see you, Kylie, as one of the highest productivity copywriters on the planet. You crank out a lot of copy for both agency clients, for own business, and you've been doing this for many years. And so I'm kind of curious what some of the rituals you have are so that you can create, good copy and compelling copy and consistent copy on an ongoing basis, and kind of some of your tricks of the trade.
Sure. One thing, this is going to be kind of funny, but one thing is really to drink enough water to stay really hydrated. Because if I go through my day and I'm just on my computer and I'm not doing those basic things to keep me healthy, like getting some exercise, drinking water, eating high quality food, I'm toast. Like I can't do anything. So that's the first thing. The second thing is really working backwards, keeping the end in mind. Like, what is my goal for what I'm doing? Where am I trying to go with this? Because it's like, if I see the house and one email is a brick, I know where the brick needs to go if I see the vision of the house. Otherwise, I'm just throwing a bunch of bricks around and it's not building anything. So I have to know, okay, we're launching a membership site right now, and the target is for this first launch, the target would be 300 members. And here's the type of person that I want to be putting into that program. And here's what their pain is. And here's how our offer can alleviate their suffering and give them something that they want. Now every brick is making sense. Like, I'm writing this email, I'm writing this social post, I'm coming up with this subject line, I'm coming up with this pre-header for the email so that people will open. All of it is moving towards a common goal. And so I know where it needs to go. And when I know where it needs to go, I can certainly write with a lot more ease and clarity, and I can write faster. Otherwise, I'm having to sit there and like labor over hooks and labor over how am I going to get people to open this? And that's also when your work can get gimmicky too. When you're not really sure where you're going with it, it can start to get gimmicky. Like, let me just do something that's going to get attention. And it's not the right kind of attention. You want to know exactly where you're driving the ship, and then you can get the right kind of attention. And when you can get the right kind of attention and sustain it, and you can get people on your webinars, and you can get people to come to your trainings, and then you have your sales. I want to say argument, because that's like the traditional way to say it, but you have your sales conversation laid out before you even do the webinar. You know where you're taking people on that webinar. And so that whole campaign and all of the ease that comes from it that I have, it's like a high pressure launch, but I don't feel pressured at all because I know where I'm trying to go. And so I think that a lot of times we don't know where we're trying to go. We don't have a specific number in mind of how many people we want. We don't really have a concrete outline of what transformational arc we want to take them on. I think that happens a lot in our industry, where people get caught up more on like the what, like I'm doing this thing, this is what I have to offer, this is the program, this is my way of doing work, this is my method, but we forget about where do we want people to go on that journey with us. So it's really looking at what's the end in mind for what I'm trying to create in a tangible way in my program. And it's also like, what is the end in mind of the transformation I'm trying to create for that person going through my process. And I think that when we can do that, combined with drinking a lot of really great water, then we can be extremely productive.
Yeah, those are some really great tips. I definitely, for me, like fitness has become a greater priority, and I realize I'm much more, when we got busy through COVID, especially, it became my highest priority. And I think it helped us to help myself to maintain the energy levels throughout the day. I will admit to drinking a lot of coffee as well as water. So I have to add, drink a lot of coffee into there, which probably is, I drink less coffee now that I work out and drink a lot more water. So that's probably a good thing, but it's definitely included. And now that
Coffee is a great productivity booster. I love coffee. People always say, oh, you should quit coffee for this reason. Or I see these ads like with a picture of matcha or chai on one side, or mushroom coffee, and then a picture of coffee, and they're like demonizing the coffee. And
right.
I can't help myself but write in the comments about how much I love coffee. And actually, there's a lot of research to show that it's actually quite good for you. You know, you have to watch the acidity a little bit, but there's ways to do that. But honestly, there's so many benefits to drinking coffee. I always tell people I've given up every vice in my life, and I'm unwilling to give up the coffee. I'm going to drink it until I die. And I'm committed to that. I'm very committed to that reality.
Yeah, for me, I've given up sugar and a lot of grains and wheats and stuff like that. So yeah, so coffee still's on the list of things I do take in, and it has become a ritual for me. So yeah, I'm not going to give it up right now. Maybe at some point I will. I don't say never, but right now I'm quite happy with drinking my coffee.
Andrew Huberman has a really great podcast called Huberman Lab, and he has an entire episode on how it's like 2.5 hours on the most beneficial ways to use caffeine for your productivity. He includes like how much to drink based on your body weight, what time of day to drink it, how soon after eating. It's a really, if you like biohacky type stuff like I do, I would check that episode out, because it'll teach you the best way to optimize your caffeine so that it's fueling you and not depleting you. So just in case you're like us and you don't want to give it up, let's get you moving in the right direction with it.
We should have some kind of coffee sponsor here. I have 5 tips that I use, and these aren't really, these are how I operate. And so you can take them or leave them through the years. This has kind of been the things that I've implemented for myself that I know that work for me. And you may have your own version, or some of this might not work for you. So just, that's the caveat, is use what you think is useful and throw out the rest. Probably one of the biggest insights I had was just to block my time. And I don't know where I read this, but it was something like, billionaires don't have to-do lists. So if they need to do something, then they schedule it onto their calendar. So if I have like a task, rather than having a list of 50 things on a list, what I do is I go into my calendar and I'll schedule a block of time. So if I need to write an email, or work on an ad campaign, or write a sales page, or meet a client, whatever it is, I just put it on my calendar, or I try to give it to somebody else to do. So it's kind of blocking it or give it to somebody else to do. If it ends up on a list, it tends to stay there for a while. or if it's in my inbox, it tends to stay there for a while. So I like to schedule things into my calendar. So if you're struggling with something, then just put it on your schedule is what I would say. The second thing that's been a game changer for me is voice transcription tools. I'm quite audio, and so for me to like write 3,000 words for my book it's just not my natural style. I tend to shift to my other brain when I'm typing and I go slower. I'm a fast typer, but I can't stay in the channel. And so I used to use rev.com and now I use otter.ai. And I have the version that's on my phone. So I can go for a walk in the morning and I can dictate emails, I can dictate sales pages, I can get podcast ideas down. And I'm using it currently to write a book. And so this is a real clean way for me to get like a lot of information down in a short amount of time on a 1 hour walk. Not only am I getting my 5,000 plus steps, but I can probably get around 3,500 words out. A chapter in a book is about 2,500 words. So it's a lot of content. If I was to sit down and type, I might be able to get 800 words maybe. And they'd probably be poorly written. So this is just a way. So that's my second tip. The third tip is when I do tend to get working, I think one of the major blocks is I don't have all the information that I need. So often I really want to make sure I have, like I'm working on a high profile sales page that's a huge launch for the fall. And we've spent weeks just trying to get all the right information, the name, the subtitle, the modules, who exactly is the avatar for, so that when I actually do sit down to write or to channel on the phone, that it just kind of flows through me. And then as I'm doing this prep work, what's kind of happening is I have ideas of where everything's going. And so I can kind of see the gaps so that when I actually sit down to be productive, I have everything I need. And this has been learned the hard way, where I sit down and I'm like, where's that email? Where is this? That's the other thing that's kind of linked to this is if we have information, if we have one document, every document links to all of the other documents. So if there's an ad copy document or there's a offer page document or an email document, every document has links to all the other documents. Because a number of times I've been like, oh my God, where is that other document? Where do I find it? So we just, and inside our company, we just have everything links to everything. So you can find everything easily. So the proper prep, and then linking everything to everything else so that it's just easy to find, can create a lot of decreased friction, basically.
Yeah, I love all of that. It's super helpful. I do like lists for the mere fact that I like the dopamine hit that I get when I can cross something off of it. But I think there's a more efficient way to use them than what most people do. So I have like a running list of everything I need to do, but then I break it down into like this year, this month, this week, and today. And then if I don't finish today, I just move it to the next today. But it helps me to be able to look and see what I need to do that week. And then I can kind of look at what's on my calendar. And like Richard said, start to calendar it in. So if I have a lot of meetings in a certain day, I'm probably not going to get a lot of other work done. So I just leave it alone for that day. And then the days where I don't have as many meetings, which I love, then I'll put like a 4-hour block or 2-hour block or whatever it is, and I'll get everything done during that time. So I do block it out, but I do use a list just simply for the fact that if I don't have a running list of everything I need to do, I'll never remember what it is. I have to write everything down. And then, but I organize it in such a way that the list isn't controlling my life. People say this about email too. It's like you go into the inbox first thing in the morning and you get sucked in and you're on everybody else's agenda. I do check my email many times a day, but I also try to just be really brief about it. And I'll take a look in the morning at what communications have come in. There's so many between text messages and Facebook inbox and Instagram inbox and my multiple email addresses. There's so many. So I take stock of them and I reply when I want to. A lot of CEOs will say like the email inbox is a black hole and it will put you on everybody else's agenda before you get your own stuff done. And so it's also important to be able to look at those messages and keep mental stock, or sometimes I'll even write it down, like reply to this person so I don't forget. But it's not controlling me in my morning. I'm not taking more than like 5 or 10 minutes to take stock of what's in there. And I also unsubscribe from just about everything that's not 100% necessary. So the communications that are coming in are important from people that I know personally, from people that really need what I have. And also it can be helpful if you do want to be on a bunch of other people's lists to see what marketing is coming through, to see what they're up to follow through with them. It can be useful to start another email address just for that stuff. So your inbox is really filled with people that you need to hear from, and then you can go check on all that other stuff at another time. That's a tool that I've used over the years to get me out of the email black hole, which is another productivity suck. I mean, people spend like, I read something like people check their email 16 times a day or something like that. So we want to make sure when we're doing that, that we're not spending 5 or 10 minutes every time that we check it in there, because that adds up really, really fast.
Yeah, I love all those things. So the two other time-saving ideas or productivity hacks, one is to use templates. And it's not so much that you use a template to copy it or make it some like AI thing, but there definitely are formulas. So for like sales pages, we have a conscious launch offer template. There are ad templates and things that we turn back to, and we've innovated these through the years, and we teach these inside our source and accelerator and syndicate programs. But if you use a template as you're gathering all the information kind of from the previous step, then you know exactly what information you need, and it just becomes easier. And then when you get to a section on a template, if you've done that for 50 other launches, it becomes pretty easy, and you can kind of crank out things. We don't want to recreate the wheel or recreate a template every time. We can innovate here and there, and different launches have different things, but without templatizing things, I think that you can you're just recreating, and often you're creating something that isn't as successful as what's been done before. So whether you use our templates or you find some other marketer to follow that has templates, I think it's a really important way to increase your productivity. Kylie, do you use templates for ads and for the things that you do as well?
I think the templates for ads is just in my head at this point, but I will ask our ad guy to send me the top performing ads from other campaigns, and I'll kind of mimic them. I'll break them down and say, what was I doing here? Why was I doing it? But for emails, for the launches that I write for, there we do have templates, and so it's like, okay, 48 hours, 24 hours, FAQ. We follow a system for the follow-up emails that I follow that pretty closely. I also have been playing with Chat GPT recently. Don't get all freaked out. I'm not worried about AI replacing any of us, but we did have an event recently in Miami, and we had a speaker talk about how to get the information out of the Chat GPT that you want. So I haven't been using it to generate ads or emails because I don't think it can speak directly to our audience well enough yet. It doesn't have like heart and soul, but I've been using it to generate ideas. So I've been using it to generate, like, give me 10 email subject lines just like this one, and it'll give me all these variations and add headlines. I even asked it the other day to summarize the Bhagavad Gita. I was like, give me a PhD dissertation on Bhagavad Gita. It told me that it won't write a PhD dissertation, but it gave me ideas for one. And so then I said, summarize the chapters, and it did. So now I'm like reading all the books I want to read with Chat GPT. I'm just like, give me an in-depth summary of chapter 1 of Winning the Story Wars. And it does. And it's great. I even asked it, we've been talking about the difference between building a business and building a movement. So I asked Chat GPT, I said, how can you build a worldwide movement? And it gave me 4 steps, and they were good. I was like, oh man, this is great. I could write a whole email about these steps, and it's not like I'm taking the ideas from the robot that I didn't already have in my own head, but it's laying it out for me in such a way that it's super helpful. So you could also use some of the tools that are coming out now to come up with ideas. My copywriting mentor said, for every one good idea that he has, the computer can have 10 faster. So he's been using it not to replace him as a writer, but just to come up with some good ideas. So you can also use tools like that. And if you don't want to, that's fine. But I've been, ever since we had that guest talk about how to get the prompts, like what prompts to use to get good information out of it, I've been playing around with having it write ads, making up stuff, making up fake email and ad topics, and it comes up with some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And it's all about productivity. So if you can use tools like that to increase your productivity, all the more so to do it. The last tip that I have is more kind of like getting accountable to yourself and other people. So I work really well on deadlines, and I'm not saying I meet all the deadlines at the time, but I kind of rely on my team or my clients to let me know what they expect the deadline to be, and then I work toward deadline, and then I'll schedule the output that or the time I need to make sure that I, meet the deadline as best as possible or beat it. And so I think this is something that this is harder if you're working on a project that doesn't have a deadline. It could be a book or a special project or a new product that doesn't have a launch date. Then I think that if you have a team or a mentor, or maybe it's a co-conspirator in your project, you can come together and start to form some deadlines. Without the deadline, I tend to just kind of waffle in the wind. It's like a sail that hasn't been tied down or is pointed the wrong way. So I actually like deadlines a lot. I like to commit to things, and then if the commitment is verbal or written, then I tend to want to honor all my commitments as much as humanly possible. Do I fail sometimes? Yeah. But for me, it's a huge thing to be responsible to other people and to myself and my own words. So this is kind of the last way I use to get leverage in my own business, especially for the projects that don't have that maybe are non-urgent, and maybe in the short term less important, but maybe in the long term a lot of the non-urgent, less important short term tend to be the things that are really important in the long term, like starting a podcast, starting a book, writing a dissertation or something like this, or studying a whole new field like AI. There's a lot of things that nobody's forcing you to do that. No client is asking you to do that. But if you want to be at the top of your field, you do that because this is kind of the cutting edge of what's coming up. And your clients are going to want to know that that knowledge. So you've got to spend the time so that you can be best in the world.
Absolutely. And the more productive you are, the more you can help people. The idea is to become more productive, not to be on like a hamster wheel, but to actually leverage your energy. So all of the stuff we're talking about is to produce more with less energy, with less time, with less stress. So we're not talking about like crush it culture here, although I do like that word a lot. It's not that. It's how can you, Richard always talks about the minimal viable dose. Like, how can you use the least amount of energy to get the most amount of things done? And hopefully you've got some ideas around that from listening to us today. And maybe you have your own ideas. Feel free to leave it in the comments. We would be happy to hear some of your ideas, and maybe we can talk about that in the future on another episode.
Yeah, thanks for joining us here on the Conscious Marketer podcast. And we don't run ads here, but if you could go on to iTunes or Spotify, leave us a review. That would be great, and share it with other people. You can find more information about us and the products we offer, including the source, the syndicate, and our accelerator on consciousmarketer.com. And you can get all our podcast episodes on iTunes, Spotify, and also consciousmarketer.com/podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks, Kylie, for a great episode again.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye for now.